I wanted to talk about how the brain is so important. And yeah, lately I've just been thinking about how important our brain really is and how the level of importance the brain has in our daily function, in our day to day, in our quality of life is not talked about enough. Yes, we are starting to talk more about dementia. We are starting to talk more about Alzheimer's, but there's still so much more about the brain than just these things. The brain literally controls or is the main hub for the rest of your body. When there's not enough input in the brain, we can start to lose function in our hands and our fingers. Disruption in the cerebellum and in your brainstem can result in numbness in your fingers or your hands or losing your grip. There's so many things to this. And I'm going to use me as an example, but growing up, the only thing that people cared about in regards to the brain was making sure I was educated. And that's not even really about the brain. I mean, yes, it's about learning, but that was more image based. That was not truly about the function of the brain and brain health and the way that maintaining cognition is also related to your ability to move, that your memory is also connected to your fingers, that your ability to read is also connected to your visual processing, that is separate from, or not separate, but it's further than just being able to see or have eyesight. There's so many more things about the brain. And to me, again, this isn't to um, bring any other like chronic illness or anything like that down. I'm going to use cancer as an example because years back, when people started talking about cancer, it was so hard to get people to understand the pain and the intensity of chemotherapy. Like there was a time when that was true. And now cancer has become the more common form of chronic illness or disease that is almost championed and celebrated as the face of chronic illnesses or hardship. And it is very hard. It truly is. I don't want to take away from that. I've also done a video or a podcast where a friend of mine had survived cancer. And if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check it out. I'm going to link it here. But yeah, none of this is meant to like talk down on that. I want to clarify that and I want to say that as a disclaimer. But I'm using in the beginning stages of cancer as a parallel or as an analogy for what is happening right now for the brain and other diseases that um, may be more likely to be seen in other neurodivergents. I have gotten so passionate about this ever since getting or having my concussion because nobody could understand the level of frustration I had from having short term memory loss that lasted no more than a minute and prevented me from even being able to get on phone calls. And it's not, I mean, like, yeah, sure, I still got on the phone calls because I had to make appointments, but Imagine not knowing what you had just said a minute ago and having to make 5, 6, 7 phone calls through the week, experiencing that over and over and over, while also having speech. Uh, uh, Now I'm blanking on the word. Um, but yeah, while also struggling with your speech, and everyone kind of like rushing you. Imagine trying to get to an appointment with all the steps of like packing, making sure you have a ride, and getting in the car and not knowing where you're going in your 30s. These are things that we worry about for seniors and the older generation as they start to experience dementia. But imagine trying to live a life like that in your 20s or your 30s and needing to still survive and make income, needing to still move forward in life because everything else in life continues to keep going and you don't really get a break from it. You don't get a break from bills and you're not getting help from disability and you don't really have a support system that can stay with you through these appointments or make them with you consistently. Like, these are the things that affect our cognitive functions, aka our brain, and is not limited to just seniors. These are things that can truly happen whether you have a concussion, whether you have a stroke, whether you have a concussion is a traumatic brain injury, but there are other traumatic brain injuries as well. These are all functional injuries that may not even show in your MRI or CT scan that there's anything, and you get dismissed. And this becomes chronic. There are some people who experience this for 5 years, 10 years, and it's not that you don't get better. You can, and there are treatment options for it. But this is why I refer back to cancer as an example, because the treatment options for it are not widely known, and yet the effects of it massively change your life. And these are all things related to the brain. And yet the only thing that when I was growing up, and it still is very much a thing, especially being Filipino, is like the only thing they talk about is make sure you're educated. Nobody really talks about the how important the brain is to remember the things you're studying while you're in college or even high school. Nobody even talks about how important the brain is for athleticism. Nobody talks about like how important the brain is for you to be able to use your hands to dribble a ball. These are all brain functions. Even opening a can or a jar is dependent on your fine motor skills. Like opening a rice cooker, holding your utensils, eating with utensils without being stiff, those are all brain functions, which even with me, I was struggling to hold my utensils with my left hand after my injury. So, again, these do become chronic issues. And when you face a chronic issue like that, especially in your 30s, an economy like this, the depression is so real. This is like there's so many ways we can talk about this, and I I feel like I'm still trying to grasp, even 15, 16 months after my injury, because it's still affecting me so much. My fine motor skills are still needing to be improved. 16 months post injury. Your ability to walk is also dependent on your brain. Anyways, yeah, I am hoping to keep getting my thoughts together, because it's still been so hard to wrap my head around how my life has changed and how hard it's been to get people to understand how much concussions and functional injuries can change your life, and how chronic and persistent it is. How brain fog isn't just as simple as, like, when I was just ADHD and, forgetting things, like the brain fog after a concussion, when you're already ADHD to begin with prior to the concussion, is like imagine you're already disabled when you're autistic. Like, just because you're level 1 support does not mean that you're not already disabled. So the level that it's disabling when you have all those things stacked is frustrating. And yeah, obviously I'm very, very passionate about this because I just want more awareness on how important the brain is, and how chronic illnesses that include or involve the brain is still massively disabling, even though it feels like the research or the stage we're at in terms of educating society about it is like the beginning stages of cancer. And I'm not saying that's 100% fact or true. I'm just, again, using it as an analogy and all of that. Anyways, hopefully I can keep getting my thoughts together and we can continue this conversation. Thank you for watching, despite how passionate I am about this. I understand that not everyone is going to relate, but even if you've never had a concussion before, I hope you find this helpful. I hope you find something to resonate with, and I will see you guys in the next video.